as we all know, today is going to be the last session. We have our last speaker here to come speak to us about his bench test experience. At the University of California. He's also going to be speaking about other schools that he also interviewed at, just to see, you know, if there's anybody out there who also needs the information, just to make sure it's like a well-rounded session. Okay, so I can see that Dr. Akintayo is here already, so I'm just gonna send him an invite. 1 second. All right, so I just sent the invite. I'm just waiting for him to join in, and then we can just get started. How's everybody's Sunday? I didn't even start with that. Should I say with that? Hope everyone is doing well. Let me just adjust this by headband a bit. It's looking funky. Perfect. Just waiting for us to connect.
Better. I can see it now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. Sorry, I'm really late. I apologize. I just had an emergency on my way home. Sorry about that.
I'm happy you made it home safe, though. Like that's
yeah, very important.
It's like to catch your breath, or you just want to dive right into it.
No, just drive right into it. It's fine.
Well, how's school going? Hope everything's fine.
Well, I guess that's a subjective or objective. I guess I get, but honestly, it's going great. Like it's a great experience, and honestly, I'm grateful for it. But it could be stressful at times. Like Friday, we had a practical exam, and it was like, you know, with all the time and everything, and I'm like, but it was good, and you know, it was good to unwind afterwards. Go to the play tennis, go out with friends, and hang out. And but it's a wonderful experience.
Good. Just want you to like relax, smile, you know.
Yeah, kind of.
Anyway, so thanks for agreeing to do this. So everyone, Dr. Akintayo Ogunji, he's here to speak to us about his experience with the UCLA bench test. I'm also going to try and open up to like other schools interviewed at. So if you can just give us like little hints and there, you know, about what the experience was like, that would be amazing. But before we like go into that, can you just tell us briefly about who Dr. Ogunji is?
I'm seeing a lot of names here, and I think most of the names I can see here are people who know me already. But yeah, my name is Tayo Ogunji. I graduated from the University of Lagos in Nigeria in 2012, and Dami, as you all know, the wonderful black dentist in Canada, my classmate. So yeah, we've been on this journey for a while now, and after graduation, I practiced in Nigeria for a couple of years, probably about six years thereabout, and then you know the opportunity came to move to Canada with my family, and then I did that in 2019, and yeah, it was a great experience moving, and then for me it was like. My mom will always say something, you know, if you can, you know, I would love to see you as a dentist once again. And I'm like, well, I will try, but it's hard, Bob. It's hard. I just want to earn money. And but yeah, I was like, okay, I'm just going to try and see how it goes, basically. So I did register for the Canadian pathway. That was a bit more tricky because the exams are twice a year and stuff like that. And it was even compounded with COVID. So COVID just made everything. I had my exams booked, but then COVID just like shut everything down, and that was really hard. And then I had a couple of friends who had gone down to the US, and they were like, you know, dude, just go down to the US. It's gonna pay. And for me, it was just about, you know, let's just try it, right? It never hurts. Like it's a lot of money, but let's just try it. And then I tried it, and then it worked. But generally, that's just me from Lagos to Canada, now to the US, and hopefully around the world.
Now, all right, for giving us like a brief summary about who you are. That were you did you do like a residency before you moved to Canada? Did you do like a master's in Canada before you moved to Canada? Like
so that's an interesting question, actually. So it was just prior to moving to Canada in 2019. I had just gotten a residency offer from Luth, and to do auto. And yeah, it was I was conflicted at that point in time, because I was like, wow, I've always wanted to do auto residency for a very long time. This has been 2 years in the waiting, and it's finally here. And I'm like, well, this is Canada, an allure of a beautiful, brand new life and stuff like that. And it was a hard decision, honestly, because I'm somebody who I think I really don't like change. Change is inevitable, but I'm not very akin to change. Like if I take my toothbrush from somewhere, I put it somewhere else, I can't find it the next day, and I'm like, I have to take a new one. So yeah, I was like, should I stay and do my residency or go to Canada? And then I was in that mix and everything, but eventually I moved anyway, so I was going to do that. But since being to Canada, I was more focused about getting my dentistry done. I was trying to make sure I didn't spend too much money on doing other things. I didn't do a master's. I went for my dental assistant certification. That one you can do without having to go back to school. You can go back to school if you want to, but I didn't. I just challenged the exams, got that done. Did a bit of some certification courses. I did one from Washington's University of Washington, and here and there a couple of other things, but nothing major. No masters, no residency particularly. And then hopefully, like it just goes out for everybody out there too, because people are thinking if you have to do a residency to get into stuff like that, or a master's or a preceptorship, and the truth of the matter is you can. It doesn't hurt to do it, but the truth of the matter is you don't have to if you don't want to, and I'm living proof of that.
Yeah, I agree. What I wanted to ask was, so I know you mentioned that you mentioned briefly about how you started with the Canadian process and then someone encouraged you to go for the US. So was that your only reason why you decided to go for the US, or were there some other like pulling attractive factors that made you be like, I'm not in Canada anymore, I'm gonna go to US?
If I'm being honest, really, I just wanted to get into school. It didn't matter where or whatever it was. Well, that was the first thing actually, and the second thing was, it was also, I think the universe just came around and made this work really, just like everything just lined up perfectly, because I was trying a couple of other things too. I was trying to do a master's in Canada too. I applied to UBC a couple of times for a master's and a clinical diploma, and I applied to other schools in Europe here and there. So I was trying my things, other things. It was like trying different kind of things and seeing which one works first. And then suddenly this part seemed to be like working even faster than the others. So I was like, oh, let's give it our best shot, basically. So yeah, that's probably how it happened. Like, I'm kind of like an open person. I'm like, I'm not fixated on it has to be this way. Like, let's try different things and see which one works best. And, this worked.
And I'm happy that you said that, because I feel like if there's something I could tell my younger self is I wish I had given myself more options. So it's always good to always like give yourself all options, like just basket. Because when I started, I was just focused on Canada, and to think like US one time, well, 1.5, but the first cycle was like towards the end, so I don't really think of the cycle, but the full one cycle that I did, I got in. So in my head, I'm like, I should have just done this from the beginning.
Exactly. And I agree with you. Like, if I had an advice for my younger self, it would have been to start the US process earlier.
I feel like a lot of people don't know that. Like a lot of people shy away from the US process with good reason, of course. Yeah. But I always feel like I won't say don't think too much about the loan thing, don't think so much about that, but at the same time you also just don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And I'm happy that you talked about applying to European countries as well. Like, I feel like people don't even consider that. They just leave it at the US, Canada, and don't try to explore other options. So like for everyone, like, don't just limit your options to just US and Canada. You might be the one to make a headway in another country. You might be the one to make a headway in Australia or something. Just don't limit your options to just these two countries, because okay, everybody's like, in these two countries. So I'm happy. So let's go straight into the application process before we now talk about the interview and the bench test. Can you just give me a brief idea of what your profile is like your TOEFL, your resume, whether you had Canadian experience, how many attempts for the board exams, like just brief that.
Okay, so I know a couple of days ago you had Dr. Tony on the program. Dr. Tony was like, we're in this process together, so we're like doing it together a lot of times, and I was kind of like following his lead, and Tony was like, Tayo, let's go do this stuff, let's go do it, and he went and did the part one. But then I looked at part one, and he had so much occlusion, right? He had like this occlusion, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this part one, right? And then I was dragging it forever, and then the best news that ever happened to me was when I saw that they said, oh, you don't have to take part one anymore. There's a new IMBD. I'm like, yes, and that's what I took actually. And then I did the IMBD. I passed on the first attempt. It was a very interesting exam actually. I liked it. I liked the format. It was better, like I think, than the MBD 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I think it was more concise, so that made it, they can't give you as many questions if you have just one exam, right? So that was great. But in terms of application, my resume, I think my resume was pretty, particularly just there. I think following graduation and working, I had lots of like experience in terms of hands-on and workshops, basically, which I put in there. And had a lot of CE courses too. So CE courses that I did locally, internationally. I did it elective programs, here and there. I put that in there. That was that about the program itself. Like I said, I mentioned my Washington program too. That was in there. And in terms of profile, basically itself, like I couldn't put I had an offer of a residency, but I couldn't put that in there because I put it somewhere in my SOP or something like that. Like I had it, but I didn't take it. But it wasn't something I didn't have the experience, because I never started it anyways. So that was that about that. In terms of my TOEFL, I think I had 114 thereabouts in my TOEFL. So and I prepared for it in like a week and a half or something like that. So I think I'm good in English. Just kidding. But yeah, it wasn't it's a tricky exam, but if you can figure it out, it's not that terrible to do, really. So that was that about that. My GPA itself was, I don't know if it's just a Nigerian thing, but my GPA was about 2.8 something, according to ECE. So it wasn't the greatest, especially when you see all the Indians with 4.2 and whatever it is. But yeah, I think each country has their own like kind of characteristic grade that they have. So I think it was probably average for a Nigerian, really. But in terms of profile, what else was on that profile? So that was there. My CV was there. My other applications stuff were there. But that was pretty much it in my profile in there.
All right. Got letters of recommendation from Dean.
So yeah, I got one from Dean. I got one from a professor in the department in school. I got one from my my boss in Canada when I was working as an assistant here in there, which is very important, really, because I think for people who are planning distance, the one letter from the Dean, you really can influence it, really, because it's probably generic. But the other two, you can, and you should try to. Some people might not be able to, but you should, as much as possible, try to, get them to they have to speak highly of you, because that's what actually helps you get into that door. Because basically, your applications are, you're not in there physically, you're just sending a document, basically. So you have to make sure you get as much, information and recommendation and praise in that format, basically. And the same goes for your SOP too. I think another thing that helped me really was my SOP and my letter of recommendations, because it was funny because I wrote my SOP the first time myself, and I showed a couple of people in my family and said, hey, take this. And they were like, oh wow, if I had a job, I would give it to you right now. It's so good. And then I showed it to somebody who is supposed to be a professional, and it was like, what did you just write? I was like, really? Yeah, it was that. It was like, no. You have a good story, but there's no content. I'm like, wow. So I had to write it like 10 times, honestly. Like I wrote it all over again. And then, but yeah, I think it helped me because, I had to go back and revisit it, and then, understand the concept of what they're looking for in your recommendation, in your SOP. And once you're able to grasp that fact, it helps you be able to, write it better. And I think that helped me too. So my SOP, honestly, I think it was like maybe 11/10.
So you got professional help for the right, perfect. Because I know there's a bit of a debate about that. But like write yourself, some people are like, oh, get professional help. So honestly, I feel like you felt like you needed help, and that was and I wrote mine myself. I think because Tony is clearly a very good writer. Okay, because when I felt embarrassed. But honestly, I'm happy that you said that you showed people, because I think that's another thing that helps you know if you need help or not. Because I showed a family member of mine who does like a lot of education stuff, like she writes a lot of documents and letters and stuff. So able to look at it from a professional point, and she was like, okay, make corrections here and there. And then I know that I also showed some of my a friend of mine that was in UCLA. So I'm trying to just bring up the point of, if you write your statement of purpose, just don't be like, oh, I'm a bad guy. I've written, show people
Yeah, exactly. And just to clarify, well, it
Yeah.
wasn't a professional help I actually got. It was somebody who was in the program already. Apparently, the person went to LLU actually. So who
Okay.
was like out of the program. Like, what do you think about it? It was like, well, honestly, if you can get professional help, it's good to get it.
Yeah.
But right at that point in time when I was doing my application, I was like constantly checking my credit card and my cash and everything. I'm like, no, I'm not going to pay $400 for a professional to do something for me. No way. But yeah, if you do have the money to do it, it's good to do it just to get a second opinion. But like I showed, like it must have been at least 10 people, different people opinions, sample those opinions, and made feedback based on those opinions.
That's, and honestly, that helped you, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I'm assuming we don't have only Nigerians here. We have people from other countries where maybe like English is not like the first language. So if
Mhm.
you're not so strong with English, I would highly recommend that you get professional help, or you have someone who is good with English, put together your statement of purpose, because that, and so if you're already getting it wrong from the beginning, it can be.
Yeah,
I've never been on any admission committee though, but I can just imagine as a human being that could be a turn off. I don't know what you think, but I just feel like that could be a turn off.
I
And then
agree.
you mentioned the letter of recommendation. So you say you got a letter recommendation from your dean and from some other people. So I also wanted to say something about that, because you said you can't necessarily like influence the one from the dean because
Mhm.
generic, and then you also mentioned that you maybe influence the others just so that people don't get the wrong idea. We're not saying that you should write the letter yourself,
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely.
or so influence in the sense that this should be people that know you, and then you should be able to communicate to them that, you know what, you want them to you want them to say what they truly think about you. Hopefully it's positive things,
Mhm. Yeah,
or,
yeah.
or right,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
because I just don't want people to get like the wrong
Oh
idea.
yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
and then also the dental assistant. So you mentioned that you got a letter from your from where you were as a dental assistant. So how long did you practice? Well, I wouldn't use the word practice, but how long did you work for as a dental assistant?
Yeah, I would say about 2 years actually before I moved over to US. So yeah, it was about 2 years.
From your point of view, do you think there's a minimum amount of years that you need for or North American dental experience to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to put this on my resume?
Honestly, I don't think there is a specific, like when I applied, my application cycle, I had only done a year and a half or thereabout.
Okay.
I know I've heard people say it has a minimum of 2 years or something like that, but honestly, I don't think so.
Okay.
Uh, I think there are so many parameters, and that particular North American experience isn't like a highly important one that's going to be make or break.
I agree. All right, so let's just go straight into, and then you also mentioned that you applied. This was your first cycle that you applied for.
Mm.
So, what were the schools that you applied to, and why? Did you have like a strategy when you were applying, or you just?
Uh, well, I, I would say yeah, you have to be strategic about applications because you have to, like, it's like I said, for me it's not cheap anyways. You have to, you're going to send an application. The first one in capital is $200 and something, and then the subsequent ones about 112 or something like that. If I remember correctly. So you have to be strategic about it, basically. Apart from the fact that most schools have their own supplemental fees and applications too. So basically, so I did apply to a total of 10 schools personally, which some people say was a lot, some people say was too little, but I guess that's what worked for me, really. And I tried to keep all my eggs in one basket. So I did some on the West Coast, some on the East Coast, some in the Central America and stuff like that. And of course, you also have to like research the school. Is it something that you think fits well with your kind of personality? You also want to research, because some schools just want green card holders and citizens and stuff like that. You don't want to just keep wasting money if they aren't going to be taking people who are none of those kind of situations, basically. So I did do a bit of research in that one, and do so most of my schools were schools I felt that if I get into this program, I would absolutely love myself. I see myself being in that program. Of course there were other ones you just throw in there, just in case, here and there, but a lot of them I had to do a lot of research to see which schools I think I'll be a best fit for.
Okay. All right, good. And I'm happy that you said that, because I feel like a lot of people forget the part of doing research, because I feel like the worst thing you can do is just apply to any school and then just take any school, and then you get in and you hate yourself and you want to quit the program. after all that effort. So I'm
Yeah.
happy because that's very, very important. You guys, before you apply to schools, do your research. I know that there's pressure on you to get into a school, but the
Mhm.
one you do to yourself is to just get into any school, a school you don't love. You know,
Correct.
I remember when I was applying to LLB, for example, I actually reached out to people in the school when I asked what was their experience there. Even
Yeah.
my interview, I just knew this was the school I wanted. You understand? So, and I also saw the values too, you know. So I didn't just go for any school. I'm happy I had that. I'm happy I had choices, but I'm happy that I picked LLU. You know, go, you
Mhm.
guys can hear.
Well, don't
But
tell anybody, but LLE was also very high on my list too. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm happy. I'm happy where I am.
like that's going to use it, and I'm really having fun. Like when we talk,
Yeah, 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 yeah. We have the beaches and cola and stuff like that. So I think we're better than desert, anyways. But it's fine. We can argue some other time.
that's kind of so. I know you mentioned that. Also, another thing I want to talk about was supplemental fees. I don't think people are aware that
Yeah.
you pay fees to set up a profile happy. You pay fees to no sorry, what am I saying? You set up a profile, but you pay fees to I think
Then it's application.
and then you pay supplemental fees in the school. So do your research because the worst thing that can happen is you get ahead and you realize that oh, I didn't budget for all these expenses. Do your research,
Yeah.
and then I know you mentioned that some of the things that helped you in your application was your statement of purpose and your letters of recommendation. What else do you think helped you stand out in your application, or do you feel like it was just those two things?
I think those two have been high on the priority list. I also think that that your the way you also present yourself also in your application also goes a long way. Basically, what you try to do, like in some of it, actually just wrote what I'm currently working on too, and what I'm my plans for the next future. And in some of it, actually, I wrote like and if this doesn't happen to me this time around, I won't be giving up, and then, I'm just gonna like let them know my plans. If whatever happens, that kind of thing, basically. And honestly, another thing is your applicant pool also. It's a very diverse applicant pool, and most schools now are going for diversity, and then here and there. So there's going to be that factor also happening in there. So I think combination of factors won't be one particular thing. And then I think for me also, like one thing is it's you have a quarter chance to get an interview and then or a bench test. But once you get those opportunities, I think that's what actually happens. Like that's what sets you apart. Once you get that interview, once you get that invite, once you get that bench test preparation, then is the point where you have to give it your all, like whatever it takes at that point. And I think for me that's what happened because once I got the like I got invited. I applied to 10 schools. I got invited to 3 schools, and I got into those 3 schools. So it's like it was for me. It was like get in there and putting your best effort, and I think that's what happened.
So what were the 10 schools that you applied to?
Off the top of my head, let me think. So I applied to UPenn. I applied to UPenn late. So I don't know if that's And anyways, I applied to UPenn. I applied to Boston. I applied to Buffalo. I applied to NYU. That's 4. I applied to Loma Linda, UCLA, USC, Pacific. That's 9, and there's one more. And
Yeah, I think you applied to US. Okay, you already mentioned USC, right?
I said USC already. There's one more somewhere. I can't remember, but there were 10.
Okay.
1 second. Give me 1 second. I will find.
Okay. All right. Thank you for trying to research. Thank you.
I will find it because I had the book. So that's another thing you should do. I have the book where I had all my details of everybody.
Yeah.
Michigan. That's the last one. So it was Michigan. So yeah, but I had a book where I wrote everything. I had it like a book where I wrote the schools I've applied to, at what stage I was already, if I'd done my supplemental, if I'd sent my letters, if I'd sent my ECE and stuff like that, so that it was able to help. Like there's so much stuff going on at that point in time. You also have to cope with work and stuff like that. So it was always good to be organized. So I had a book that was dedicated especially to CAPID and applications, and that was very helpful for me.
It's good that you mentioned that because I actually did that too. So you had a checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's right. There are a lot of things that are going on. You're sending applications to so many schools. Each school has different requirements. So it's always wise to have like a mental checklist or a physical checklist where you can check things off and be like, okay, you know what, I've sent this out or I've written this and all that. So you don't get lost in the whole process.
Yeah.
So what were the schools that you interviewed at?
So it must have been Loma Linda, UCLA, and USC.
Okay.
I got one eventually from Boston a couple of weeks, a couple of months back, but by then I was like, dude, sorry, whatever, whatever. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Let's just focus on those three and then talk about, let's just break down the bench test process, the interview process. Maybe let's start with the bench test first. So maybe if you can just give us an idea of what the procedures were. I guess one thing I want to ask is did they send ahead of time the procedures that you would work on, or you just did your research and found out from like students that were there?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. So it depends on the school actually. So for UCLA last year, we actually didn't have a physical bench, which was good. They actually haven't had it in the last 2 years. We don't know if that is changing this year. We really can't. It's all speculations, anyways. It might. They've changed a couple of things for this year because last year we didn't have to do a Casper test, but I know for the applications this year they have to do a Casper and the Auto Suite, and Casper and the snapshot for this year. So that's what changed for UCLA this year. We don't know if there's going to be a physical bench or not. But in previous years when they had a physical bench, there was always it was just usually class 2 preparations and a PFM crown, usually an anterior PFM crown, usually. And then of course they had OSCEs and stuff like that. But that was basically UCLA in a nutshell for their bench. Loma Linda has been traditionally been class 2s. It still will change over the years, but it's always been traditionally class 2. So that was easy to prepare. So for me, when I was preparing for it, it was also lots of class 2 preparation, because definitely there was no way you can avoid that. And it was the same for USC too. USC at that point in time also did it year before. They also didn't have a bench test. They did it like an MMI online format. And I was praying and hoping it was going to be the same thing that year, because USC do have an intense bench test when they do it. They have like 8 items you have to do, like crown preps, class 3 fill-ins, class 2 fill-ins, and this and it's a lot. So they also didn't have a physical bench last year too. It was only Loma Linda was the only one I physically had to go down for a bench last year.
Right, sure. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, that, but I mean, like you said, LLU was the only school that did the bench test. LLU is like, we need
yeah, they're like intense.
But you also said if you have the right team with you, that's
yeah.
So you already talked about the procedure. So let's just talk about how did you prepare for the if you talk about like the materials you use, where you got your materials from, if you went for like any course and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I previously mentioned that I had a friend who went to LLU. He's finished now anyways, but when I had the invite, so like you were saying earlier, once you get that an interview, it's always good to reach out to people in the school, find somebody who's either been there, is currently there and stuff. So when I got that, basically I rang him up and said, hey, I have this interview, what can I do? And then I started practicing. Of course, definitely I had a bench set up in my house, so I bought a compressor, bought a turbine, and I got lots of teeth, and I was like drilling away. And but I was always getting a critique. That's one important thing you have to do. You got to get a critique, basically. So I would constantly send it to him. I would take it to my boss at work and say, can you please look at this prep on what can I do better? And that was something I had to do over and over and over and over. And so, yeah, everybody who's going to do that, if you get a bench invite, you want to make sure you're not thinking about you doing it alone. And then for me, I didn't attend a bench prep course because I felt they were too expensive personally, but I did watch a lot of Stevenson's videos. Stevenson's videos are like almost gold standard, basically. So I watched a lot of them. Like I was dreaming about Stevenson's videos in my dream, literally that period. Like I would sleep up, I wake up, I'm saying, oh, class 2. I'm like, oh no, I'm not class 2. And yeah, so that was very helpful for me. And videos are free, they're very informative and stuff like that. So I had a couple of friends, being honest, who attended bench courses, so I was able to like siphon their knowledge to and say, hey, what do you think about this and there? And then that's what actually helped me on the bench. For the interviews, when I did the bench for the interviews, I did do a couple of sessions with my friend who I then I also took professional. So I attended TDA, couple sessions, and then I also attended there's a guy, Dr. Maninder Singh. I also took him for a couple sessions. So like I said, once you get an interview, like everything changes. Then you have to go all in. At that point, you have to go all in. So it was like, at this point in time, it doesn't matter. I have to get in. So then I put all my eggs in all those baskets, and then eventually it worked out.
Worked out perfectly. So you said that you did for the bench prep, you just did you worked by yourself, like you watched videos online. So since dental videos are on YouTube, you guys can watch well, and they're free. And then you had your own. So do you want to give us an idea of how you went through the process of like getting your unit? Was it, because the thing is, you had your home units, I had my home units, Tony had his own home units, and I'm just realizing that I don't think any of us have really spoken about how easy or difficult it was to get it. So that if anyone is planning to like get one as well, they can just have an idea of what they might be facing in terms of.
So this question will be best answered by Tony, because Tony was my mentor anyways. Tony was the one constantly calling me and saying, "Ty, have you gotten this? Have you got it?" I'm like, no, like go and get it. So Tony was doing that a lot for me. For the bench setup, it depends on what kind of setup you want. For me, I had two different setups. I had the electric setup, which is, I think, it's far easier, because if you have the electric setup, you just need an electric motor and an electric handpiece, which is more expensive, definitely more expensive. But it also depends on what you can afford, basically. For the other one, you can. So I needed a mountain pole. I got that off Facebook Marketplace, which was good, because it was like almost $200 something, and it was pretty hard to get. But I got it off Marketplace for like $100, which was still expensive, but it was good. And then I got a lot of Columbia teeth from there's this website, I can't remember that name anymore. They give you a lot of Columbia. You can buy Columbia teeth and the models in there. So yeah. Yeah, in Canada. I can't remember the website anymore. It's somewhere in Ontario, I believe. So you can buy that in there. If I think about it, I probably remember, but I can't remember off the top of my head now. So I bought lots of tea. I bought a mountain pole. I bought a compressor. The compressor, I just asked Tony, which one did you buy? Where did you buy it from? So Tony said Amazon. This is the specification. So I just went to Amazon and bought it. It was like $200 something for the compressor. I think it was like a California air tools, and I like those ones because they were very silent. So if you want something, you live in a house where you have noisy people, you don't want the regular oil compressors, because those can be noisy. So the California air tools oil-free compressors are very good to help you minimize noise. And I got the teeth, and then it was my first couple of teeth. I can't afford to show it to you. I threw them away because they are just like badly damaged. But it will take a few practices, really, because if you haven't held a handpiece in a couple of years, it would. And then of course, plastic teeth are different. They're a different ball game to physical human teeth. They just cut differently. So it also takes, that's why you actually have to practice too, because they're just different.
And I'm happy that you said that, because I don't think people realize that, because I don't think people understand the fact that plastic teeth are a lot different. They're easier. Should I say they're easy? Well, depending on the material that you have, some of them are easier to drill to some of them are harder to drill through. You're dealing with a different scenario versus you like practicing on your patient.
Exactly.
You don't practice on your patient, you work on your patient. So it's a different ball game. So it's always good to like practice. Like practice makes perfect. So I don't think it would be fair to you, like after doing all this work, to just enter the bench practice and not do your home practice. I think that would be very, very unfair to anyone who does that. Yeah. So let's just talk. I know you already talked about the interview process. You said the TDA course. What does TDA mean?
Toronto Dental Academy. So it's a group you can find off Facebook.
Okay.
It's based out of Toronto, but they have a track record of helping people out when you have interviews, and they organize, depending on what you want to get. You can have 2-hour sessions, 4-hour sessions, 8 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is you prefer. Depends on how confident you are, basically. But what I always advise is reach out first to somebody in the school if you can, get like samples of what they really need, and then do a bit of practice on your own. If you have family members who can talk to them, let them be your interviewee or interviewer, whatever it is, and get them, talk to them, and then get yourself up to speed, because like you're paying for this time, right? You can't afford to, you won't be going and say, hey, can you tell me what they're going to ask me? So you want to have a mindset already, a prepared mindset already, and then you go there and they just kind of like polish you up basically and like say, okay, I think your answer will better serve this way. I think you should say it this way. You can't afford to say this. You can afford to say this. Like previously, we've had these questions, so prepare for this and that. So yeah, that was very helpful too. I took a 2-hour session with them. And I know a lot of people who didn't have to take it. So you don't have to take it if you don't want to, but I felt it was helpful for me. And, you know, I think if you can afford it, it will be good, something good to like, you know, just get somebody else, somebody who's done this previously, like who's reviewed people's programs before with a different eye from like, you know, if I'm talking to my wife or talking to somebody close to me, there's a different kind of vibe. Like, oh, I think you're great, but you want somebody who's going to be objective and say, oh no, dude, you just screw that up. You know, you should say something better. So I think you need some external influence who is not going to be influenced by your, you know, your relationship to really like, you know, take a look at your preparation.
Perfect. So I don't know if you can remember any like if you just share like a few.
Yeah.
How you?
So, you know, the interview formats are pretty much the same in nearly all the schools. Like it was very similar to what I had in LLU, to what I had in UCLA. A couple of questions would change here and there, but you know, every interview for CAPIT and everything, more often than not, like 75% of the time, will start with a question: "Tell me about yourself." They may phrase it differently. They may ask you, "Oh, can we get to know you?" Whatever it is, but the question is the same for most people. And you know, they tell you that it's like an icebreaker. Basically, they know you're nervous. They know you're like you're happy to be here, but you're scared about the outcome. Basically, so they want to make sure that you're calm, and then so that basically way of you talking about yourself might be a way to just help you get relaxed and talk to them basically. So that definitely is a question you have to prepare for. And I used to have a stencil. You tell them you don't have to be it's for each interview question, the advice usually is 2 to 3 minutes of talk time. You don't want to overtake the interview. Basically, you want to give the interviewers time to ask you questions and get to know you. But so 2 to 3 minutes of talk time is always appropriate. So you have to structure your response. What I did personally was, when I was preparing, I had these questions written out. I wrote a template of what I wanted to say. Got my timer out. I talked to my phone. I recorded myself, listened to myself. Oh, guy, you sound like crap. You should do that again. And then, self-evaluation too was very important too. I evaluated myself and said, oh, no, okay, no, this isn't good. If I was an interviewer, would I be happy with this response? And I would change that basically. So that helped me. I did that a lot. I wrote my answers down, because I find, for me personally, when I write things down, if I think about a question, even if I can't remember exactly what I said, but writing those formats down just makes me remember what I need to talk about basically. So that was, very helpful for me. So I did that, and that worked. And other questions